Just preparing to live stream. All right, here we are. Welcome everyone to this week's version of The Spiritual View, and happy Mother's Day to all of you that are watching and that are mamas in some way, shape, or form out there. And today we're going to be talking about our spiritual gifts, our intuition, our clairsenses, and what that looks like, because everybody is different. So that's kind of where we're gonna go today. But before we do that, let's just connect and check in. Good morning, ladies. Hi, Sheila. Hi, Kim.
Good morning.
Yeah. So let's hear about your weekends. I'm curious. Kim, what was your weekend like?
Oh, the weekend was wonderful and crazy. We have been waiting for the arrival of our second grandchild, who actually finally arrived this morning. So, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, but it was a wonderful Mother's Day. The weather was great, spent a lot of time outside. I did a lot of reflecting on what Mother's Day meant to me, and I did share on my TikTok and other social medias kind of my new perspective on Mother's Day. Deeper thought after losing a child, it kind of changes perspective a little bit. So, but it was probably the first Mother's Day since my son died that I actually did not feel at all sad. But I think it's because I consciously chose to shift into that more positive energy, right? And that led to what I shared on my other social media is about just a different perspective on what it means to celebrate Mother's Day. So it was a great weekend and interesting just to see too the emotions with the anticipation of a grandchild coming. It was interesting to watch my husband navigate that and myself and talk about how we don't really remember feeling that when we were having our own children, but maybe we just forgot. I don't know, but it was a great weekend.
Awesome. And congratulations.
Thank you.
Beautiful. And her name is?
Her name is Eleanor Ann.
Aww.
And when I looked up the meaning, it means shining light, which I thought was so beautiful.
I love that. And you can call her for short if that's something that
yeah. It's we just found out like an hour ago. So very, very new.
Awesome. Oh, that's sweet. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Sheila, good morning. How are you?
Good. I just want to congratulate Kim and say that's amazing. And I totally misinterpreted what we were doing today. I thought the gifts were the things that showed up in our lives, like fun things and good things. I get what we're doing now, so I'm good. But when you clarify that, Tracy, but I found it so interesting that Kim got such a big gift on the day that we're talking about gifts, how our gift shows up. So really powerful. I had a great weekend in some ways, and I had a really challenging weekend. I had a situation happen in my life where, you know how you have those things happen. I had a channel come through me really strong that I needed to level up. And it came like booming out of my voice. And when you get that kind of message, there's not a lot of opportunity to even catch yourself, because it came hard and fast. And it was like, all of a sudden I was faced with my ego. And it showed me very quickly where I was really leading with my ego in certain aspects of my life. So this weekend was one of those weekends that was bittersweet. I had to, really dive in and look at where I'm presenting myself with ego. And I had to face a lot of things that, of course, are uncomfortable to face. So I would say, yes, the sun was shining. It was beautiful. And I really had that opportunity to enjoy that. But I also had a chance to feel some heaviness and some darkness from within that was really important for me to face. Yeah.
Wow. And interesting timing too, Sheila. Hey, do you see that?
The timing in what way? Sorry.
Well, just actually considering what we're talking about today, I was like, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm like, that's going to just because I didn't know that before we got on here, right? So that's going to lend perfectly into where we're going today. So I'm excited to hear more about that if you feel called to share that, because so last week when we actually met, we had a guest on, Diane Courtley, and she's this amazing medium. And one of the things that we had asked her was to kind of share a bit about how her mediumship shows up for her, right? Because one of the things I know that I've learned over the years that I maybe didn't realize at the beginning of my spiritual journey is that even though we've tried to kind of put parameters around, you could be clairvoyant or you could be clairaudient, right? And we've tried to kind of fit it into what makes sense for the logical mind. What I've also noticed when working with so many clients and having so many friends that are in this realm as well, is that everybody's gifts show up differently, right? Even the fact that all three of us, for example, could be clairvoyant, which clairvoyant is the gift of being able to see, right? That doesn't mean we see the exact way. Right? One of us might see like an entire story or like a movie reel type thing. One of us might just have images in the mind's eye. One of us might even see outside of the body, right? So they're so different. And I feel like this is a really fun topic to talk about, because I know when I first started my spiritual journey, I kind of wanted to fit them into a box. And I was like, well, if it doesn't look like this and in this certain way, then I guess I don't have that gift, or I can't do that, or it's not turned on, or whatever it is, right? So I kind of want to just dispel and destroy and create all of those myths for everybody, to let everybody know that number one, everybody is intuitive. And number two, how it shows up for you is right and divine and perfect. And there's no judgment about that, but it doesn't have to be the same. Right. So I would love to just start by hearing from each of you what maybe you could share. What are your spiritual gifts, right? Or the biggest ones that you find you use the most, depending on how you want to do that. And then once we round robin that, maybe we'll go into a little bit deeper on how they show up, if that's cool. Yeah. Awesome. Okay. So Kim, what you got?
All right. Well, first of all, this is funny, and I want to share this because just for our listeners, so that they know, this is so not scripted. And we really come on here and wing it, because I was very much in the mindset or perception of Sheila, where I just thought, we're talking about gifts, we're talking about any kind of gifts today, not necessarily spiritual gifts. So I love that. Oh, look at all this diversity that is showing up right off the bat. And that's what I love about this, is it's just each one of us just speaking from the heart in the moment, and not anything that's planned or scripted. So throw that out there. I have to just say, the first thing I thought of when this is that for me, when I think about gifts, I think of everything as a gift. I mean, of course, there are these unique spiritual gifts that we all have, but I think of even just waking up every morning is probably the greatest gift of all, because without that, we don't have anything. We have nothing. I think part of it is being in the right energy, the right alignment, the right mindset, whatever label or terminology you want to use. We have to be in that place to be able to receive, whether that's to see the gift or hear the gift or sense or feel the gift, right? And we do all have different intuitive strengths or abilities, but if you're not in that right place, that right vibration, that openness, you're not even going to see, hear, or feel what's right in front of you or around you, or tapping on your shoulder, right? I think we could spend a whole week talking about this topic, but for me, I just see, especially nowadays, I see everything as a gift, just in different ways.
Okay.
Yeah. And I missed the other part of the question, so remind me.
So like, what we can call it gifts, we can call it intuition, we can intuitive tools, whatever word we want to put on that. But when you're in session, or even just in your everyday life, what are we could say the skills or the intuitive pieces that you often use?
Okay. For me, it's just this knowing. It's a knowing, it's this truth. Sometimes it's something that comes in little bits and pieces and starts to make more sense. Sometimes it just shows up when I'm teaching. I might be teaching a workshop, and something will come out of my mouth, and it's like, how do I even know that? Like, it just downloads instantly the full detail and understanding. And just like Sheila, it sounds like she had the same experience this weekend, where it just comes out. And it's out there before you can even really think about it or analyze it or feel it. It's just, now it's out there. And now what do we do with it? But that for me is the biggest. It's just this sense, this knowing, this undeniable truth inside.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. And Sheila, what about you?
My gifts, I feel they come very intuitively, for sure. But more importantly, they come from trusting the message. So I could be giving a reading to a client and I might say something that sounds completely off base. And the client goes, no, that means nothing, doesn't sound. And I'm like, okay, I check in. And then I'm like, no, we have to stay on this track. We have to go down this road because they're pushing me to go down this road. And even though everything is telling the client's telling me it's not, doesn't make sense. I'm like, I don't know if this makes sense. I have to trust that message inside me to keep going down that road because there is going to be something at the end, and there always is. Mm-hmm. So I think it's a little bit of experience of time in doing it. Maybe in the beginning, I would be like, okay, let's not go there then. That doesn't make sense. But now it's like I have to take myself down that road. I also know that my messages aren't always comfortable for people. They don't always want to hear what I have to say. But if I'm given the message, I trust 100% that I have to deliver it. You might walk out the room and say, screw you, I don't want to hear it. Leave me alone. That can happen for sure. And that can be uncomfortable for me. That can feel, of course, you feel like you're rejected but I know 100% if I don't pay attention to those messages and offer them, then I'm not doing what I'm called to do because it wouldn't be given to me if it wasn't meant to be delivered. And it's like the message that I received this weekend for myself. And it just like came out of my voice, like, you need to level up. You need to level up. And I'm like, what does that mean? And then I kind of get a little nervous when those big messages come because I know there's something there, right? And it's not always comfortable, which it wasn't. So I'm not saying I've leveled up to it yet. I'm working on it. I'm working through it. But there is no room in this work for pulling yourself back. There's no room in this work to not give yourself fully to it. So I'm sure there's times when I backed out and I didn't offer everything that I should, but I'm getting to a point where I just can't because it's too obvious that I have to deliver what I'm given. Now, how did I come to trust those messages? That's a long process. That's years of trusting. That's years and years of not trusting. And then realizing, okay, it's not working when I don't trust it. Yeah. So yeah, when people ask you, how do you do this? I pay attention. When you present yourself to me, when you're connected to me and talking to me, there's more happening than is what's coming through your voice. I see and feel things so strongly. I could tell you your whole life story. I don't violate people that way. And I don't tend to, go in and dive into that because that's, I think, is a violation of their privacy. But if they ask me, I can do it. If they want to hear what's going on, I can tell them because it's just there for me right there. And it's as plain as day for me. So, yeah.
And so I'm curious if you don't mind sharing, like this weekend, like what were you doing when that like just fell out of your mouth?
So I'm working with a group of people to run a retreat, and we always channel to what is it that we have to do to make this retreat go. Mm-hmm. And we do the channel through me and also one of the other women in the group. And my channel, it just was like came out of my mouth when I was channeling what happened. So in order to run this retreat, there's no room for me to have ego. There's no room for me to have anything that is less than. If I'm going to lead a group of people to a place where I understand is going to serve us all, the guides were very clear. You better drop that ego quick because this isn't going to run if you don't. Mm. And so I have an agenda. I've been given an agenda, and that agenda is not like do this, this, and this for the retreat. This agenda is do this, this, and this for you, and then run that retreat.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
I love that. And like I have similar experiences to both of you. And so often like when I'm in channel mode, right. And when I'm doing sessions for people, like stuff will just flow right out of my mouth. And sometimes I hear myself and I'm like, oh, that was really fucking smart. I don't know how I knew that, but that was brilliant. I wish I had recorded that, or can someone write that down for me or whatever. Right. But I also have like, especially when I'm working with clients and whatever, my experience is often everything always for me comes on the right side. I don't know if either of you have this, but everything for me is always on the right. And it's a combination of, I hear it coming from, and I feel it coming from the right as well. And then I also will see, so I'll get, not necessarily like a whole picture, but I'll get like images that kind of like fill in the gaps of what I'm hearing at the same time. And I don't know if you have this experience either, but for me, I find it fascinating because when I get into that mode, the challenge, I guess we could say for me, is trying to get everything that's here to come out here. And it's like my mouth will not move as fast as everything else is moving. So sometimes like I'm tripping over my words, or they're kind of like a little bit almost like some people might say they're maybe run together in a way, because it's coming through so fast that it's like my body can't like physically speak it fast enough, if that makes sense. Do either of you ever have that experience? Is that yours too, or is it different for you?
I'd say similar, but a little bit different. I think back to, and Sheila, I don't know if you remember parts of, we did a weekend of the 7 Steps to Freedom with the teachings of the 7 sisters. And I was wishing I would have recorded that, because I felt like the things that were coming out were so profound for me. But I don't recall feeling where I couldn't match the energy. It was more like I had stepped out and something else has stepped in and just led the whole thing.
Gotcha.
And I can't even remember what was said, and that's why I wish it was recorded. But I know it flowed so well, and it led to great conversations, and the feedback was good, and it was a really powerful weekend. So I guess in a sense, it's like, Sheila, it's just trusting, rather than try to analyze what's coming in, or second guess or make it my own. I just let it flow. Yeah.
Awesome. Sheila, what about for you?
Well, my nature is to soften things for people. My nature is not to be blunt, my nature is to come from a place of love. But sometimes the guides don't have my nature. They have a different agenda. And what you were saying, Tracy, about the words coming faster than you can catch up to them, I've had that happen on many occasions. And really, and if the client stops me in between, then I lose that flow.
Yeah.
So I try to tell them ahead of time, if I'm moving in that flow, just let me go, because I don't know what it is that's coming, but it's meant for you. So let's just go with that flow. So something's coming awfully fast. I think that it's definitely something to pay attention to, for sure. Yeah.
I can relate to that disruption in the flow. As soon as there's that disruption, it's like, what was I just saying? Even it's hard to get back and finish.
It totally is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like a one track, fast track, and away we go. Right. And even I've noticed too, like sometimes if I have moments where I allow my thoughts to come in, that's enough too, to get me off track sometimes too. If something comes in that's more like, about my kids, or like if a notification went off or something like that, that can also kind of veer me off a little bit if I forget to turn those things off. But, even outside of session, like I have more subtler signals as well. Like, for example, I often will get like, some people call them spirit shivers, but, like the tingles in the body, the sensations, right? Or you get like the forearm kind of shivers, and I'll get things like that as well, just as like the more subtle signs that kind of say like, hey, pay attention to this, or this is a sacred yes, or whatever that is. Do either of you get those either?
Sometimes I think more than anything, I get like physical signs, whether it's a person that comes into my experience that actually delivers something, whether it's information about something I need to be aware of, or a book, or just out in nature and getting a physical sign with direction, clarity, that sort of thing. I find for me a lot shows up that way. Mm-hmm. But I have to be in the place of just presence. If I'm looking for it, I'm not going to find it.
Yeah. I remember doing a session with you, Kim, and I don't honestly remember what it was that came through me, but something came in and it just like, it hit me so hard physically. And I was like, what is this? And I had to stick with it. It was painful and it was uncomfortable, but it was something about you shifting something, your DNA. I don't know. It was something crazy. And I had to sit with it. It wasn't mine. But it was mine in the sense that I wasn't ready for that energy where Kim was. My body wasn't physically ready and Kim's body was, and I had to transfer that to Kim somehow. Yeah.
And the channel actually said that you weren't prepared, and that it was uncomfortable for you. Yeah, we've had a lot of sessions like that. They're all recorded.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was the crazy one. That one, I remember that one physically hurting me, but I knew I wasn't in harm because it was coming through love. So I never worry about it. I just go through it and then, yeah, just let it proceed the way it's supposed to.
I think
mhm.
it kind of took you out for the rest of the day, if I remember right, too.
I think
You
you're
were,
right.
I think you
Couple
were
days.
like, you had to sleep, and it was a lot.
Yeah,
It was a lot for you.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that brings up two interesting questions, actually, that I'd love to ask both of you. And the first one being, you know, do you believe, because I've heard this in metaphysical communities, do you believe that you have to be ready? Like, do you believe that your body, your mind, your energy, and your spirit have to be at a certain capacity in order for certain things to, for you to be able to access them or for them to come through? Is my question. And the second question to kind of attach to that is, what are your thoughts on, I think that there is this, I'm not going to say that word, a paradigm, maybe let's call it that, a paradigm also in metaphysical and spiritual communities, that perhaps if you are going to be, you know, a channel or a medium or an intuitive or any of those things, that there has to be an element of, we could say maybe suffering or sacrifice attached to that, perhaps in the physical body. What are your thoughts on those two things? Sheila, let's go to you first.
That's a really interesting question because I've never believed anything is a sacrifice or a suffering.
Mhm.
Even though I do suffer, the suffering comes from my resistance. It comes from me not seeing, not learning, not letting it flow through me. That's always been my experience. Of course, I've had lots of suffering. Of course, I've had lots of challenges, but that's just because I don't really trust God and the flow of what's coming to me, the message that's coming to me. Like even the message saying you need to level up, I could have flowed through that. I could have said, "Oh, that's beautiful. Let me show me the way." But I was like, what does that mean? What's coming? And I'm in resistance because I know, like, you know, my past experiences, it's not always easy. And of course, I create, it's not always easy. So, yeah, so I don't see the suffering as necessary. I see the suffering as our own doing.
Mm.
We don't, that's just my perspective. And maybe other people see it differently. But to be a channel, to be a medium, to offer this information forward, I think requires no ego. And everything in our world asks us to have an ego. Everything in our world asks us to present with that side of self, the side of self that says, you know, I'm good enough and I'm a channel, and the side of us that is ego. Like, I don't know how else to explain that, but if I have any aspect of that, I'm not doing what I'm required to do and lead with the truth and trust and faith. And really that's that was being shown to me this weekend.
Yeah, I
I
love
wouldn't
that.
have known that before this weekend. I wouldn't have had that answer before this weekend, but that's really what's come up for me now.
Yeah, I love that. Even actually, so in SRT, when you do SRT sessions, one of the things that we do to prep to work, we call it, which is essentially to kind of set the container for me and the client or the group that I'm working in, is me as a facilitator to reduce my ego to between 1% and 3%. So that there's just enough ego that I can, you know, ask the question and stay in my body and do all of those things. But there's not enough ego that it can come in and basically distort the entire session, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. And what about in terms of the capacity to hold things? What are your thoughts on that, Sheila?
Typically, people ask me, what's it like to lead a session? And I'm like, well, how would you like to be in love the entire day when you're doing this work? Like, I'm in the space of love. So that's what it feels like normally. When Kim had that session with me, my body physically wasn't ready like her body was ready to receive. So that was painful. That was difficult. But that's just maybe a message to me to, maybe you need there's some work there that needs to be done for me too. And there was probably an opportunity for my body to receive some of that and heal and work towards whatever Kim was receiving. So that wasn't easy, but typically it's very easy for me to do this work. I don't feel tired. I don't feel uncomfortable unless it's a whole day of channeling all day long. Then I would be tired. Then I would realize it, but I don't normally do that.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Kim, what about you?
Well, first of all, I agree with Sheila. I don't think we have to suffer to get gifts. I think suffering is kind of it's an unconscious choice, right? It's resistance, or for me, I think of it as, we're attached. Non-attachment leads to I think there are a lot of factors. I think it depends on the individual, the gift maybe. I think sometimes we can just ask. And if work is maybe clearing stuff. But one of the things I've noticed, especially the last few months, working with a lot of people through the QHHT, quantum healing hypnosis, and the past life stuff, is I'm believing more and more that, we come into this life choosing, I am going to be a channeler, or I'm going to be this. And it's by choice, but it's also for a purpose. Mm-hmm. And I think, what I'm finding anyways, those sessions are just bringing so much clarity, so that it just helps to make sense of what's going on right now. And then you can know what you need to do to be able to receive those gifts, or to know what gifts are yours and what aren't for this lifetime. I think we all have the ability, though, we have free will. So we also have the ability, and we all come from source, we all come from light. So we all have access to the same things. So I guess it depends on how bad you want it and what are you willing to do. And I don't say that from the sense of sacrificing, but very much like Sheila said, the love and the light is where you find the gifts. The darkness, you don't find gifts. So if there's any work to be done, it's work to be in the light, to be the light of the light. That's what I think.
Beautiful. I love that. And, I find that interesting too. Like, I too am a big past life proponent, right? And I believe that we come in from this place of our divine blueprint, right? Where we do get to kind of do some of the planning as to what we're coming into this lifetime to experience. And, I think that there's like a bit of an art to it. I think that we all have access to everything, just like you, Kim. I think that for those of us that are super curious and would like some more information about what that might look like, there's some amazing tools out there. Like, you could look at your astrological chart, for example, and the astrology could give you some information. Human design is also a huge, I was going to say key player, but I don't like that word, so I'm going to take that back. But if you look at your human design chart, for example, you can look at the different channels that you have activated, and it will tell you what they're associated with. And sometimes that type of information can kind of be a guidepost for someone to then go ahead and be like, okay, well, if there's something in my blueprint, my human design blueprint about the throat and about voice, then how can I start to activate and amplify that? And it might be chanting, it might be mantra work, it might be just speaking up and using your voice, right? But you can start to kind of peel away some of that and start to activate it for those people that feel like they're like, I don't know where to start, or I'm not sure what that looks like. Some of those tools can be super helpful. And I also feel like, to me, the capacity of what we can do and what we can hold is important. And what I mean by that is, even though we all have access to any of it, when we are, so for example, if we're stressed, if we're burnt out, chances are we're probably shutting down more of our intuitive nature because we're barely surviving, right? We're in survival mode. And so sometimes there's those types of things, sickness or disease could be another one, right? And so, taking care of ourselves on the human level, in my opinion, also lends to us being able to access the spiritual and the energetic. Is that making sense?
It totally does. And I'm just going to share, I had a session with a good friend and client the other day, and we experimented a little bit to where she gave me permission to ask subconscious questions about me. Yes. And it was so wild. And one of the things I want to share is how, one of the things the subconscious said, because I asked about what's going on in the world right now, 3D and 5D and all this shifting. And what they said is that everything that has been hidden is being revealed. And I think they meant that in a lot of different ways, like personally for people, in the collective and society. They also said that they talked about, things surfacing, all that I got to go back and listen to the recording, but it was something along the lines of all that has not been resolved or avoided is surfacing. And, I've been talking to a lot and we're feeling that. It's like, why am I feeling angry? Why am I feeling sad? I don't even have a reason, but it's like the body is preparing, I think, right? To shift us. There's a need for this. And the subconscious did talk about this too, and about how, they talked about the solar energy being so strong right now. And even people who are not doing work are feeling this energy. And I asked, what is the most important thing that we need to focus on right now? What's our priority for this? And they said self-care. There needs to be self-care, and which you just talked about. So yeah, we have to help our physical body prepare to go through this, call it a detox or, ascension. It's all these different things, but yeah. And it can be, like Sheila said, it's uncomfortable. It's exhausting. And they did say that it's exhausting for us right now.
Yeah. And it's, the body really is the vessel, right? It really is the container, if you will. Right. And so I feel like if the body is not in alignment, right, like we need alignment on all levels, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I know that's been a big focus for me, or my intention this year is, what can I do to help my body, to be healthy, to be strong, to get enough rest, everything from how much or how little exercise, water, what kind of foods, or what am I putting in my body? What am I putting on my body, on my skin, and all these things I'm trying to, with the exception of my hair, obviously, because, I'm not giving up everything. But yeah, I'm trying to really make my body a priority because I plan to live well into my hundreds. Yeah. And it's important. It's important. We need to do that.
Yeah. And I think that a beautiful message that is kind of popping up, it's time to plant, right? And know when it's time to kind of sit in the middle of that, waiting for the seeds to grow, right? Like I even look back on what I've done since January when I started, my clearing containers and things like that. And when I first started them, I had a full schedule. Like I was doing the daily clearings with the container. I was holding a container of, whether it was 20 or 50 people or whatever that was. And I was also doing all my one-on-one sessions and momming and doing all of those. And I was exhausted. So I needed to adjust. Right. And so now I've learned, like, when I'm doing these containers, I have to actually pull back the rest of my schedule so that energetically I'm not wiped out by the end of it or at the end of every day. Right. And some of that is more just learning as you grow. Right. But it's being willing to make those adjustments so that we're not pushing ourselves past the point of where we should be going, if that makes sense.
It totally does. And I want to share a message that was specific to me, but I think it would relate to everybody. And this was about the work I do from, again, the subconscious. And what they said is, not to put so much pressure on myself to do more and to just be light about it and have fun and play. And that has been something I constantly need to be reminded of, because we can get so focused on this work and because we know the benefits of it. But, maybe part of the reason why we're so exhausted is because we're just going too hard, too fast, rather than just be a little bit more light and playful with it. So that was a good reminder for me. And I'm sure a lot of people maybe need to hear that same message. Don't put so much pressure on yourself and just enjoy the ride, so to speak.
That's fascinating. What came through for me this morning was I was talking to my kids on the way to school, and I was like, we're getting really close to it being summer because they're both teenagers. And so they don't even go till the end of June, right? Because they just write their exams and then they're done. And I was like, thinking about summer and normally up until now, I just work straight through the summer, and I might take a couple of weeks off or if we go somewhere or whatever, but it would be business as usual for me over here kind of thing. And this year I was like, no, I'm going to Costco and I'm buying some paddle boards and we're going boarding at least once a week this summer. And I was like, isn't that interesting? Because it's totally outside of what I've done up until now. Right. But I was like, I need to just be a little bit more, and I need to play, and I need to have fun. And that was very much the message that came through. It was like, after you're done this live today, sit down and look at your schedule and what you're going to start to actually not add, but what you're going to take away to create more space for yourself over the summer. So yeah, that's fascinating.
I think when you do that, you'll find you'll actually receive more. That was my experience last year, because I mean, I do a lot of different things, but summer always gets quiet, right? Like everybody feels good in the summer for the most part. So nobody's really looking for healing work or coaching, which makes sense. And in years past, I would go into that fear, right? My ego would come in and, okay, well, how are you going to, sustain the same income that you usually do? And last year I just thought, I don't care. I'm going to enjoy this summer. And that's what I did. I went paddleboarding all the time and kayaking, and I just had fun. But what I was finding is I'd come off the lake and, my email would be full of somebody wanting this, someone wanting that. Like the less I tried to control it, and it was probably my best summer for work, but yet I worked less. So yes, I'm with you on that. I think that's a great idea.
The surrender experiment.
Yes.
Totally. Sheila, do you have anything that you want to add to that?
I just think it's interesting that we're all being called to clean up our lives. We're all getting called to, we talk about this great awakening. We talk about what's happening in the world. And I think it's as simple as clean up your own life. Like, don't go looking for your neighbor to clean it up. Don't look for your sister to be better, your mother to be better. Look for yourself to clean up in your own area. And I think that's really the message I'm receiving strongly is, if I'm in victimhood, or if I'm, if I'm in conflict with someone, what is that? That is my ego. That is me saying I'm right, you're wrong. It has all those elements of pointing the finger. And the more I point the finger, and the more I don't trust, like you say, you don't trust that work will come. You don't trust that the right thing is coming. The more the right thing doesn't come. So I think all of us are being called to step into the power, like Kim said, go on the lake, and then get off the lake and see what comes. See what comes your way. She's not pointing the finger at anyone. She's not in victimhood when she's on that lake. She is in the space of, feeling nature, feeling God, feeling the source of what is, whatever you want to call it. And the more that I think that we offer that is our gifts. That is what we have. And that is what we're learning. And this is not just Tracy, Kim, and myself learning this. I think this is a whole planet learning this. We see this in our friends. We see this in our family, that everyone's starting to pay attention to what they're doing, and being more mindful of how we behave and how we act, and not looking for it to be outside ourselves, but looking for it from within. So yeah, that's my big opportunity now. And I'm really not going to try to point the finger at anyone to try to do that for me. Absolutely, healers and people like us can help us open up to those spaces, but I'm the one that has to do the work. I'm the one that has to let myself open up to it. I'm the one that needs to knock on Kim's door or Tracy's door and get the help. So it always comes back to me. Always. Yeah.
Awesome. I just had a message come through that I have to share. And the message, what they said is, you, as in all of us, everybody, you are the gift. And the more light you bring in, the more your gift will become clear.
I love that.
Simple. Yeah.
Perfect.
Makes so much sense.
Yeah. Okay. I have one last question. So if you were to look back on your spiritual journey, which started, 10 years, 15, whatever that is for you, it doesn't matter. What do you think is the biggest thing that you had to overcome to get to where you are right now, specifically in terms of how your intuition works and what your gifts that you have online right now are?
I know for sure for me, the biggest thing that I still am overcoming is doing it my way. Yeah. I keep wanting to do it my way. And I get these messages that come in and say, we're here to guide you. Listen up. And yet I still want to do it my way. And every time I try to do it my way, I got to tell you, it doesn't work. It never has. And I'm sure it never will. If I trust into the guides and I trust my divine source, then I will be guided in the right direction and everything always works out. I think I've shared my story where I woke up one morning and I had nothing. I didn't know where I was going to get groceries. I didn't know what to, like, I honestly had nothing. And I'm like, okay, what do I do now? And every step after that was guided for me.
Yeah.
Every single step. And suddenly I had money and suddenly this came and suddenly, it was just crazy. But then, then I'm like, okay, I got that. Now I need to stop that and I got to do it my way. And so the biggest thing for me is to stop doing it my way and to trust. There's a bigger picture. There's a way better story than I could even imagine.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. Kim, what about you?
That's an easy answer for me. The biggest thing for me to overcome was the acceptance of Tristan's death, and not staying in the suffering of that. Not to say I don't, have sadness every now and then, but I really have more joy and gratitude. And I know a lot of people that doesn't make sense, but I would not be who I am today, doing what I'm doing today, in the place of enjoyment that I am today, had we not gone through that. So that, and when I made that shift, everything changed. My whole life changed in every area: my health, my other relationships, my business, my gifts. It was the light, right? I moved from the darkness into the light, just like the channel said. And then the gifts, they just shine through.
Beautiful. Thank you.
How about you?
I think for me, like it all, and it's sometimes it's still this way, it continues to come back to trust, for sure. And I think especially when I first started my journey, I was very much plugged into like, what are the steps to do this? Like I was really looking for someone else to tell me how to do it, or even probably at some point for someone else to do it for me. Right. And so I really had to start to unplug from that and get to a place where I could relearn how to trust myself, and everything that was coming through or coming in, and to also remove like any of the judgments, the projections, the points of view, like other people's stories that I had to attach to that said that it had to look this way or it could only be that way. Like I really had to expand myself into that trust and also open up to what is possible for me that will look different than what is possible for everyone else, if that makes sense. So for me, there was definitely an element of having to take my own power back and really trust in myself first and foremost, rather than looking to other people that I saw as, more intuitive than me or ahead of me in the journey or, knowing more than me. Right. And then looking to them and being like, please tell me what to do. Right. I really had to get away from all of that. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. I love this conversation.
We could go on and on.
Totally. Right. And of course, if you're watching this, feel free to drop, in the comments, especially on our Facebook page, and we can continue the conversation there if you have any questions. And they might be more specific to whoever is listening to your situation or what you're experiencing. Right. And so feel free to ask, and we'll share our own experiences about it. And hopefully that'll help you in some way, shape, or form. But we can continue it on our Facebook page there. And is there any final words that either of you have before we kind of say goodbye for today?
No, the message again, let the light shine in and find your gifts. Make that your intention for today, maybe.
Beautiful. Awesome. Okay. Sheila, you're good?
I'm good. Yes. It always, these conversations always lead me in the direction I need to go as well. So just speaking to it and then living it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Well, next week on Monday, we'll be having a special guest. You're definitely going to want to tune in and join us for that. And for those of you that are here in Alberta, we're wishing you is it Alberta or is it federal? Is it a federal May long weekend? I think it is, right? Yeah. So if you're in Canada, then we're wishing you a happy May long weekend. And most of us are having some nice hot weather. So get out and connect in nature. Another beautiful way to start to grow your gifts as well is to spend some time outside and put your feet in the grass and, touch the trees and talk to the trees and all of those things. And thank you so much for being here. And we will see you all next week.